Hey all! Today we're going to have a culmination of everyone's missions as they return home, and around the same time. Teams 8 and 9 were of course out to investigate a mighty bridge being built, supposedly to connect the Land of Mist with the mainland. They experienced some tumultuous waters in what was supposed to be a quiet mission, but all returned home safely. Team 10 went out with Lord Orochimaru to the edge of the desert in the Land of Wind for a special mission set out by Orochimaru himself. Forging for a flower got muddied up too, and Orochimaru's mission was rendered moot by what had happened. Team 7 was woken in the night to bring an injustice to order, but with one problem solved, perhaps there are more mysteries made. The 4th Hokage was out of town for a few days to visit the feudal lord for various meetings, and so missed some of the action he could have otherwise intervened in. And now all three teams are standing in a lineup, waiting their turn to hear what the Hokage has to say about their missions, as well as be assigned a new one. Team 10 is at the front of the line, teams 8 and 9 behind. Upon entering the room, Naruto lights up at seeing his dad for the first time in 2 weeks. When he tries to run forward, Asuma catches him and tells him to mind his manners, it's not their turn yet. Minato looks up at Guy and asks him how their mission went. Orochimaru never returned to the village with Guy, returning instead to his lab, so Guy's even unsure of what Orochimaru may or may not have shared with Lord Fourth. Guy describes the primary task first, gathering flowers. They were easy to find and posed no problem to grab on their own. Meanwhile, however, they were ambushed by 3 unknown shinobi who wore headbands that had no markings on them. Might Guy begrudgingly admits that without Orochimaru's presence, him and his team may well have been beaten. He notes that only Ino had the wherewithal and foresight to assume a genjutsu and summon Orochimaru to deal with their foes. However, Orochimaru noted that the 3 turned to 12 as he pursued them, and they ended up making a complete escape. He follows this up with approaching the Hokage's table and placing a drawn map of the last seen whereabouts. Minato looks at the map and leans back for a few moments in silence. Eventually, he leans over to Tsunade and tells her to summon Jiraiya back to the village. She nods and jots down a couple notes. Guy goes on to say that he and his team need further work so that a genjutsu doesn't so easily thwart them again. He adds that Orochimaru cancelled their meeting, but they gathered the flowers anyway since they were there, so Guy's not sure how the mission should be classified. Sorry Guy, that's a failure. Minato shrugs with angst. Forget the flowers, you charged into the fray without first acknowledging the threat. Someone of your skill should have easily been able to dispatch them if carefully measured in advance. Guy nods and accepts the Hokage's judgment. Minato rifles through the missions on his table before settling on a D-rank mission. He hands it to Guy, who doesn't even question its simplicity. As he turns to leave with his team, Minato asks him to stand aside and wait for him to finish with the other teams. Next up, teams 8 and 9. As Kurenai explains the happenings of their mission, Asuma walks forward and lays the twin blades of Ringo on the table for Minato. The bridge was still a work in progress and quite far from the shore. Kurenai assumed it would still be a year before they finished, but that's only an estimation since they don't know when the construction started. Additionally, with the involvement of the Cloud Ninja, it was safe to assume the bridge either got destroyed or its workers killed. Asuma chips in that it would probably be a good idea to contact the Raikage considering the risks involved to both Lands of Fire and Lightning. Continuing, Kurenai of course mentions the involvement of the Swordsman of the Mist and that the previously thought dead Ringo is now certainly dead. Asuma also adds that Naruto lost control and a little bit of the fox crept out. Mind you, this is in full earshot of everyone in the room, all the Genin as well. Minato looks at Naruto for a moment before leaning to Tsunade again and telling her to stamp the summons to Jiraiya as urgent. This of course causes consternation for poor Naruto as his fellow Genin start staring daggers at him. He tries to act nonchalant, but this is Naruto, he's clearly annoyed. With 2 weeks on the road, their Genin were also able to get a lot of specific training in, and Sakura and Tenten are specifically mentioned as the outliers in their groups. Not only did they show remarkable growth in training, but their involvement in the mission itself and dealing with the swordsmen was pivotal in outmaneuvering them. Minato smirks and looks at Tsunade again, remarking aloud that the boys seem to be falling behind. Forgetting Naruto as their sole focus, the boys get a little annoyed at the news, while the girls pump fists in victory. Shuffling through his papers again, Minato pauses on a couple options before deciding on a C rank mission for Asuma and a B rank mission for Kurenai. Again, before they leave, Minato tells them to wait until Team 7 is finished. Kakashi relays exactly what Minato already knows, and it causes rolling revelations and confusion in the other Genin. Hinata was completely unaware that her sister was kidnapped until just now, even though she'd been waiting with Neji for a few hours for their mission debriefings. Teams 8 and 9 just got back to the village that morning, so she's had no time to go home yet. She goes from shock and concern to annoyance, and actually a little bit of anger as she stares at the back of Neji's head. Why would he keep something so important and relevant to her secret? But this isn't the only point of contention. Kiba and Naruto realize that the severity of Team 7's mission was much higher than theirs. It doesn't matter that Naruto's mission became S rank, or that Kiba went on a mission with the reclusive Orochimaru. To them, they were given lesser tasks for their station. But Team 7 was given a mission that by all rights was meant only for Anbu. Kakashi named Sasuke as the star of his team on this mission for fighting strategically, keeping his cool, and showing growth in his teamwork with Neji. Before Sasuke can receive congratulations from Minato, Naruto shouts out complaints that Team 7 got to go out on such a dangerous mission, followed by agreement by an annoyed Kiba. Asuma tells them both to shut it, but they've already drawn Minato's attention. He tells them that the Anbu were stretched thin and any help they could get was necessary, adding that if any team was in the village at the time, they likely would have been called upon. Neji remarks that he doesn't know why they're sugarcoating it. Team 7 is clearly made up of the elite Genin. Naruto scoffs at the assertion, skimming past Neji and Sasuke before declaring that he could easily beat Shikamaru in a fight. Kiba too claims that he could wipe the floor with Sasuke any day of the week, and wonders who could have made that decision. "Prove me wrong," Minato tells them flatly. Grinding his teeth, Naruto glances from his father to glaring at Team 7. Addressing all the teams together, Minato tells them that collectively, their missions all went sideways. He could credit the Jonin and one of the Sannin for their combined survival, but that would be disingenuous. In truth, it takes every member of a team to ensure survival. And while some teams did better than others could have been in greater danger. The smallest effort by even a Genin can make the difference between death and survival. Walking towards the groups, Minato stops beside Sasuke and puts a hand on his shoulder. He regales them with a tale of another who helped the village during challenging times. A dangerous squad of S-rank mist ninja were heading for the village only to be intercepted by the unlikeliest of opponents, a Genin. He says that he was barely older than they are now when this Genin stood alone to protect the village. Was it a foolish sacrifice? Perhaps. But it was also the most heroic tale Minato's ever heard of a fellow Leaf Shinobi. He wasn't famous, and he did so knowing he would die. When Choji asks who it was, Minato glances at Might Guy for just a moment before telling him that it's not important. What's important is knowing that age or rank doesn't matter when it comes to protecting the village. They don't have to wait until they're adults to be outstanding shinobi. He looks down at Sasuke, adding that there was another half their age who stood where they are now, with more promise than anyone Minato has ever laid eyes on. Again, when the Genin ask for the identity of such an amazing ninja, Minato glances at Sasuke before revealing that it was Sasuke's own flesh and blood, Itachi Uchiha. He tells them that the rules changed slightly and leadership in the village didn't want to see such young children fighting wars anymore. It was still possible to graduate or receive promotions at a younger age, but if it were even possible, they made it harder to do so. But all that promise that Itachi had, Sasuke also has. Minato tells them again to prove him wrong, as nothing would please him more than to know even more Genin have advanced to such a level. He points at Neji and says there hasn't been a Hyuga so gifted in countless generations. He points too at Shikamaru, citing that Shikamaru is smarter than most adults that are considered genius. Team 7 wasn't decided on a whim. Its members are all geniuses. Minato then settles a hand on Kakashi and tells them that Kakashi wasn't just his student, but that he was a Chunin at the age of 6. He then waves a hand to the other Jonin in the room and tells the kids that they are not jealous of Kakashi. They respect him for his talents. They're even all friends. He tells them that competition is good for improvement, but cooperation is better for survival. A quick jab from Tsunade reminds Minato that he wasn't meant to give them a full-on speech, so he awkwardly stops talking and dismisses them from the room. Between the incident with the bridge and the seal loosening on the fox, Minato had so much to do with just this, never mind all his other duties. As all 16 shinobi spill outside, the Jonin dismiss their Genin and tell them not to argue about the Hokage's decisions. Though some of the Genin try to leave, Hinata really wants to get home to see how her sister's doing. The bulk of the group continues fighting over who's elite and who's not, and they end up traveling together away from the Hokage's office. Minato's speech seems to have mostly missed the mark with this bunch. Sakura tells Naruto that he couldn't even beat her right now. Where does he get off thinking he could beat Shikamaru? Just as he's about to argue back, Ino steps in and tells Sakura that one compliment bloats her already massive forehead. Rock Lee tries to get between both girls to stop their arguing as it won't get them anywhere, but he's pushed from behind by Neji, who's still avoiding Hinata and trying to weave between the crowd to get away. As Rock Lee attempts to push Neji back, Sasuke catches his hand and knocks it away, triggering Kiba to get in Sasuke's face. Their insane scrambling leads them to an open training field near the Ninja Academy. "Well, hey, how about we settle it once and for all?" Kiba challenges loudly over their chattering. "If the elite are so elite, they shouldn't care about some sparring." Sasuke shrugs and tells Kiba that it's brave to lose in front of all your peers after such a challenge, but he's willing to be the one to embarrass him. Tenten and Sakura and Ino are all content with their improvements, so they've no need to prove themselves further. Hinata just wants to talk to Neji. She's not interested in any fighting. Shino and Choji are indifferent to who thinks who's elite. Shino thinks his actions on the field will let him shine brighter than a petty squabble in a schoolyard. Choji was one of the few shaken by Minato's speech. Maybe it doesn't matter at all who's elite right now. Maybe that'll all be different in a month, a year. Rock Lee, on the other hand, actually has issues with this elite group. He put his neck on the line against 2 unknown ninja. He could have died in the exchange, and it would have been a hollow death had he known that he was this lesser ninja, tossed aside on some task where he was babysat by a Sanin? To put it simply, his pride is hurt by the implication. And so, Naruto, Kiba, and Rock Lee step forward to challenge Team 7. At the front of the line, Naruto volunteers to fight any of the 3, it doesn't matter. Irritated that he's even involved in this stupid argument, Shikamaru tells Naruto he'll fight him if it'll stop his yammering for once. Hinata tries to get them to stop escalating to violence, but their rising tempers render them deaf to her good advice. Stage set. Naruto vs Shikamaru. The rest waste no time in shuffling to the side as an audience to the duel. Hinata lags behind, trying to muster voice so that Naruto will listen, but all he does is tell her to clear out. Pulling out one of his dad's signature kunai, Naruto shakes his head at Shikamaru. Naruto knows that with chakra alone, he could crush Shikamaru, and so he plans to dash around with the flying Raijin to keep Shikamaru on his heels. No need to finish him off too fast. Naruto grins and starts by throwing 3 kunai in great arcs above Shikamaru, who totally ignores them. The failed feints were for the special kunai Naruto threw just to the side of Shikamaru, with intent to reappear on Shikamaru's backside. A spark of metal as Minato's kunai gets deflected into the ground by one of Shikamaru's own kunai. As Naruto finishes the jutsu to fly to the dagger, Shikamaru tosses it almost straight up, and so Naruto appears in the air, falling. Activating his own Hiden technique, Shikamaru lays down a tendril right below where Naruto's falling, catching him immediately. As Naruto lands, Shikamaru body checks him as they both tumble to the ground. Shikamaru kneels victorious over him. Over in a heartbeat, Neji chuckles, shaking his head in turn at Naruto that the stupid kid thought he stood a chance. Relinquishing his shadows, Shikamaru stands up and Naruto scrambles to his feet. "What do you want from me?" Shikamaru asks. "I didn't choose to be in this team." While Naruto complains about the circumstances of the fight, Shikamaru walks away. Having lost full interest now, he leaves the group and goes home, not even celebrating with Neji or Sasuke. Next up, Kiba vs Sasuke. Sasuke's own pride keeps the Sharingan inactive as he smirks at Kiba placing Akamaru on the ground from his head. Wasting no time, Kiba throws 2 shuriken in a wide arc at Sasuke, who pulls out a kunai to deflect them. Meanwhile, Kiba charges for a frontal assault. As Sasuke deflects the blades, Kiba launches at him, but Sasuke is at a much higher level with technical taijutsu and outpaces, outmaneuvers, and outsmarts Kiba's onslaught. As Kiba begins to be overwhelmed, Akamaru launches at Sasuke from behind, but without even releasing Kiba, Sasuke jumps in the air so that Akamaru is flying instead at Kiba. Losing altitude, Sasuke comes down with a foot to pin Akamaru to the ground. He notes that in a real fight, the dog wouldn't be able to fight anymore, so he should be disqualified. This earns a quick and hard knee from Kiba, which Sasuke both blocks and uses as a launch-off point to create distance. As he's flying through the air, Sasuke conjures a fireball that he's sure Kiba can deal with, and sure enough, Kiba throws up a mud wall to block it. The impact creates a small puff of smoke around Kiba, and Sasuke dives in for his own taijutsu strike. His hope is that the burning smell would mask his own scent enough that he could creep in for a surprise attack, but Kiba's already leapt from the smoke himself. Impressed that Kiba is holding his own so well, Sasuke decides to add some variety, tacking several fireballs behind each other at Kiba's landing point. Instead of using them as a distraction, Sasuke runs in behind and amongst them as they surge towards Kiba. Blinded by their light, Kiba can't even see Sasuke between them, and suddenly the back of his head smushes into the grass as Sasuke's fireballs pass harmlessly overhead, and the young Uchiha has a hand on Kiba's throat. With no more grace than Naruto, Kiba starts complaining about Sasuke threatening his dog as a distraction for what could have been a harmless sparring session. Sasuke chuckles and rejoins the group at the sidelines. He watches Neji walk past him for the third and final match. Neji's just chuckling under his breath, flummoxed by the very idea that any of these Genin could possibly even lay a hand on them. Finally, Rock Lee versus Neji. Neji tries taunting Rock Lee as his ego has soared, with the victory of the last 2 matches going to his team, but Rock Lee is ultra focused and ignores his comments. Rock Lee bolts towards him, well aware of the Hyuga's gentle fist, and uses several tiger strikes in an attempt to end the fight early. Though much slower in striking speed than Rock Lee, Neji's able to block and deflect Rock Lee's strikes with ample defenses. As Neji finds time to weave signs between Rock Lee's onslaught, Lee's forced to retreat as the dirt at his feet turns to quicksand. Neji catches his leg as he jumps to evade, and Lee falls right back down to the quicksand. Speed halted, Lee fights against the quicksand and tries to find his feet, but he quickly becomes overwhelmed. As the jutsu fades, only his head is left above the ground. Neji squats beside him with a sneer, complaining that someone who can only use taijutsu would of course lose to him in combat. As Neji taunts Lee's head, he reaches in for a slap, when someone's hand grabs his wrist. His annoyance turns to fright, as he looks up to see a clearly angry Kakashi, yanking him away from Rock Lee. As he looks around, Neji realizes all the Jonin have come to break up the party. Oops, I've run out of time. This is going to have to get a classic to be continued. A lot happened in this episode though, so hopefully you'll forgive me for cutting off so abruptly like that. Today I want you to give me some feedback. Do you want me to flesh out these fights, or would you rather vagaries of fights just to get the gist? As you've no doubt noticed, I put very little actual dialogue into my writing. I instead insert the idea of what's being said. This way I don't have to spend an entire episode on a conversation because I think people underestimate how many words are shared between people in a simple conversation. For my 20-minute episodes, a conversation might take a whole video. So instead, I just give the Cole's notes and allow you to connect the dots. Regardless, for my channel, the sky's the limit.